pleasure to call to order the June 10th City Commission meeting. If you all would rise and remain standing, first silence your phones or do it as you stand. But if you'd rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, we have with us today Alan from he's the head of school at the Jewish Academy of Orlando. Please, sir.
Thank you for inviting me. First, I want to make it clear that I'm not a rabbi, just a fellow citizen and an educator who cares deeply about our community and our world. My name is Alan Rasonic. I'm the head of school at Jewish Academy of Orlando, formerly the Hebrew Day School of Central Florida in Maitland. We just completed our 41st year of operations, and we are very proud of our graduates who teach to give back to their communities and to the world at large. We teach our students daily to go out and change the world and to make our world a better place. Almost half of our students live here in Winter Park. For the past 16 years, our school has been involved with Louise Sheehy's multi-faith education program, now run by Debbie Medina, and we have been involved in planting trees for peace here in in Winter Park, at the conclusion of each programmatic year. Once again, I'm humbled and honored by your invitation to give today's invocation. Rabbi Simcha Buna of Pishka, a small town in Poland, once said to his students, "Everyone must have two pockets, so that he can reach into the one or the other according to his needs. In his right pocket are to be the words, 'For my sake was the world created.' In his left, 'I am but dust and ashes.'" As the rabbi taught us, it was necessary for each of us to be reminded of the paradox of our positions. We must be reminded that holiness is drawn from God, but at the same time, holiness also comes from the people whom we serve. Each of us must be constantly reminded that we are asked to live in service to God and in service to each other. We must always be reminded that while we are only dust and ashes, we must shoulder the responsibility for a world that was created for our sake. Adonai, our God, we ask your blessings for our country, these United States of America, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority on both the national and local levels. Teach them insights of your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of government fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our community with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony to banish all hatred and bigotry and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions which are the pride and glory of our country and our community. May this city of Winter Park, Florida, under your providence, be an influence for good, uniting all people in peace and freedom, and helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet Micah. He has told you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk humbly with your God. And let us say, Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Rasonic, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Randy, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir. I invited John Wayne Smith from Peoples and Smith to give us an update on the legislative session this year, and I forgot to put that on the agenda. So he is here, and would like to do that under your report, if that would be okay.
That's fine. I'll take that under my report. Thank you. I'm looking in the audience for Rich. I don't see Rich Ott here. No? Has he always run late? That's his father. I can ask him that. Okay, so with that, Sabrina is here also from the library. Sabrina, we're going to do this at the end, but I think it's more appropriate during this report. Would you take, I know you have something to share during this time of year. Would you mind doing that now? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, on this fine rainy day. I just wanted to come up and share with you that it is summertime, so the library has launched its annual Summer Reading Challenge. This year, we are challenging the community to read 10,000 books. Last year, we challenged them to read 5,000. They read 7,500, so we thought we'd up our game. We have already read 1,344 books since we started on June 1st. We had a great kickoff. Over 300 people were there. We had face painting, we had a petting zoo, we had a rock wall, we had a human snow cone machine. So It was a wonderful event. And as you all know, every summer we do this because we are helping to combat the summer reading slide. So we ramp up our summer curriculum, we have classes and events, dozens and dozens, and this year the theme is A Universe of Stories because we are honoring the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landing on July 20th. So I have copies of the guide for everyone. We'd love for you to stop by any of our classes and events. And as part of our summer reading challenge, Sarah. So we've got these great I'm reading, and you can tell everyone.
I know you're all going to be very jealous, but I'm reading Commercial Oilfield Diving.
And we thank you all for participating, and I would love to get a photo of you all at some point after the meeting.
So we will fill these out. And
Perfect.
by the end of the meeting, we'll take a picture.
And you're welcome to snap them and post them to social media with the hashtag WPReads.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you, Sabrina. We appreciate that. Great. John Wayne, would you mind coming up? Again, John Wayne Smith from, I can't even name it, Peebles, Smith, and Matthews?
Yeah, you did.
I got it right? All right, it's better than a law firm, it's easier. Is our lobbyist in Tallahassee, does a lot of great work for not only us, but I know you represent many communities throughout the state. You also work closely with the League of Mayors and the League of Cities and the League of Counties. So this is, we're honored to have you here as an expert and to try to share with us what happened up in Tallahassee as best you can this year.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I also want to remind folks that we do this jointly with Gray Robinson Law Firm. So you have a great number of resources at which to work and to represent you on a wide variety of issues. I always like to just thank the mayor and Randy for the privilege and the commission to serve and represent you, to be your eyes and ears in Tallahassee. I have described Tallahassee and what has taken place in 2019 to a variety of different groups, and my best news is to say that they're done and they're finished. It took them an extra day. But you can rest at ease a little bit, and you don't have to worry about any of the emails or newsletters or alerts for a little while. The bad news is that it's a short break because they start early with the cycle that they take. So we really get the summer off, and the fall they get cranked back up and do committee meetings, and session starts earlier as well in January. So the good news is after that is there's an election year, and they'll take a longer pause, and maybe there'll be something new. So that's entrees. There are so many things that you could kind of talk about. What I have told folks is kind of the short and sweet summary of 2019 is that the Florida Senate kind of took the lead on what I call the numbers issues or the budget issues. If you compare the layouts of what they proposed, things aligned more with what the Senate wanted in the budget, which also aligned a lot with our new governor, Governor DeSantis. All those kind of priorities kind of matched up better. The House had a position that was a little more conservative and was not big on the spending side, but the way they negotiated things, it kind of leaned more to the Senate's kind of priorities. The thing that it means, though, is on the policy side, I think in the negotiations there was some latitude given to what the House wanted to talk about in the policy arena. And so if you look at some of the issues in the bills, particularly if you follow the bill numbers, you'll see that a lot of House bills made it through. And that's not good, bad, or indifferent, but if you're in local government, you know that can create a lot of challenges because in the House there's still a lot of attention given to what's on city and county's plate. So that means that we work a lot. Tons of things that I could talk about. Two bills that I just want to mention because I believe that they were on Winter Park's radar screen the most were one, House Bill 9, which dealt with community redevelopment agencies. You've done some great work in your community with the tax increment financing and setting those boundaries and the priorities in your CRA. You're not one of the ones that were under attack, but because we have had some issues in other areas, and because those areas have been in the backyard of the speaker, that has had like a 3-year battle to try to figure out how to work with the House leadership to find some kind of compromise in dealing with ethical issues, dealing with reporting issues, transparency issues, without just throwing CRAs and not recognizing that they can really do some really cool things. So a lot of the things that you'll see, there's a lot of words on paper, but a lot of it is not, you know, going to be harmful or make it so that CRAs go away, but there are more reporting. There are things that we have to do to put our audits and our performance data online. There's ethics training for those boards that aren't the city commission boards. So if they were not getting the ethics training that city officials or county officials get, they're now in there. The one thing that will probably raise the most eyebrows is that we did agree to, or part of the compromise is, there's a 20-year sunset on all CRAs, 2039. It was that 2039, or if there was a deadline or the life of a CRA that was earlier, that you would have to take a vote to put it back on the table and keep it going. Because it's the governing body and because it's a majority vote, we accepted that. That was something that the Speaker and the House leadership wanted really, really bad, but we didn't think that that was, you know, a threshold that folks couldn't do. If your CRA is doing well and if you're happy with it, you just got to vote again to say, yeah, we like our CRA and we're just going to keep on going. So I wanted to mention House Bill 9 because I know
Not the county, just
No.
our.
it's the governing body of the CRA. So some counties do have some CRAs.
I understand, but in our situation, it's just.
Yours. Yeah, yeah. So any other questions on CRAs before I move on?
Yeah, so if I followed you correctly, they're all sunsetting in 2039?
Every
And if
single
you,
one.
if yours wasn't going till 2039, you'd have to renew it through a vote?
You, if yours goes away, or if you have a, like, the sunset was not statutory but was already built in, yeah, this mechanism, if you want to do the extension, because you can extend CRAs, and I think you can do them up to 30 years. I think there's a limitation, but you also are thrown into this. You have to do go back and vote it up again.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Randy, do we have to do it?
Counties vote also.
Okay.
So we can extend it to 2030, so we can extend it to 2039.
First day up here?
I know. 2039 with just a vote of our commission and the county, or, okay.
Yeah. I think where the county comes in certain charter county, and it depends on when your CRA was created, if the county helped put it in place, those kinds of things. If you're going to change a boundary or anything that involve what is going to change what is not current, you're going to amend it, modify it, then I believe that brings the county into play in some of your decision making. But for this particular just up or down sunset, it's just the governing body, if that helps clarify.
It does, thank you, John.
All right.
Next.
So the other thing I just kind of wanted to mention, because I know that there's been a lot of effort in Winter Park with your downtown area, with your utilities, and dealing with whether it's the electric, the small cell tower stuff, all of those issues for your quality of life and how you want to present your community, I think has been very important. Winter Park has always had a major voice in these kinds of discussions, is to talk about Senate Bill 1000, which we call 5G, or the small cell tower legislation. It does go back and tighten in many ways what we did in 2017, and we just negotiated something with the industry just 2 years ago. One thing I wanted to point out specifically to Winter Park's interest is protecting and preserving the undergrounding mechanisms. And Bill, who has been on our team the longest, runs point and was there to work and make sure that the things that you already have, whether it's electric or the other things that you're doing, are preserved. Winter Park is kind of special in that area. You're a leader in many regards to many communities to how you deal with whether it's above ground or underground. So I wanted to point those pieces out. And then maybe just the other thing is they keep ratcheting and focusing on not only what the rules are in the right-of-way, but they keep trying to tighten what we're calling the shot clock, or the timeline for approvals. And one of the things that may come up to be a concern later is we are setting aside specific privileges or different timelines for one of the users of the right-of-way. and how that might impact other users is yet to be determined. But we basically allowed, in many cases, them to move to the front of the line or to go quicker than everyone else. So, we'll work with Randy and your staff to see if that has an impact on y'all, to see if that does in the implementation do anything that might be harmful. Last but not least, I would just like to say thank you again and to recognize Randy, George, the city attorney, and others. I know that there's names that I'm supposed to know, but your staff does a great job in giving us insights on pieces of legislation and how it actually affects Winter Park so that we get the home flavor. You've got folks, and I don't know how they have time, they read these bills, and sometimes they're sending me comments before I've read them, but they're really engaged and very helpful so that we understand what we need to be focused on. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll stop and just see if there's any other questions.
Thank you, John Wayne. Questions for Mr. Smith? No, John, I'll just say, one of the things too, and we've been following the 5G. It's interesting now, there's an effort at the federal level to preempt states, which should be interesting to hear the states' comments on that after they've preempted us. So we appreciate your efforts though too, really managing the preemption challenge that we face. It's something we're continuing to watch and continue to be concerned about. And I know that every time you listen to some of the legislators up there, they talk about how tired they are of hearing that home rule is an issue for local municipalities, which we respond back, and that's why, leave it alone, and you won't hear about it so much from us. But thank you for staying on top of it. I know you and Bill and Dean and Ryan, you guys all do a great job for us up there. So thank you, and we appreciate you coming down today too.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate
Thanks,
the
sir.
opportunity. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, I have, folks, I have 4A, I have the appointment of Mary Daniels to the Charter Review Advisory Committee. You all asked for another appointment, so Ms. Daniels has agreed to serve. So I make that motion? Okay, I'll take that as a second. That's my motion, so I'll take Commissioner Cooper as a second. Randy, I'm considering this an administrative, yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Seidel. We have also the establishment of the Auditor Selection Board, which is something we do every few years. I don't remember, I believe Mr. Weldon sat on it last time, is that correct?
Right, we need one commissioner, and the charter calls for one commissioner and 4 citizens. Wes has made some suggestions here, and I believe he's talked with these individuals, and they're available.
Wes,
But-
they've all agreed to serve if chosen?
But the commission can choose any, mayor, you can appoint anyone and with the commission's approval.
Yeah. I would move, I'm just going to ask if there's any commission member who desires to serve as that chair. Commissioner Sprinkle, Commissioner Seidel, I look to you first, and Commissioner Cooper's already shaking her head, but I would just ask the members who've served longest first.
I've had privilege.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Would either of you, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Well, I was
step
just gonna
up, sir?
ask, didn't you just say it could be anybody?
I can.
We need one commissioner.
We need
Oh,
one
you-
commission
four
no,
member.
But you have to have one commissioner,
Yes.
One commission member.
and not
yes.
former commissioners, right?
Correct.
That's correct. Would you care to chair this, either of you?
I'm fine to do it.
Okay, so I would
I'm
move
not an
that.
auditor by trade, though, just let that be known.
Uh,
I know a couple, but
Isn't this
We'll
just
forgive
a
you.
selection?
This is just selection.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I would move
Yeah.
that. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second it. I've
Great.
served on it before.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And now the 4 members that are suggested by Mr. Hamel, I don't have a problem. I think I only know one of these folks personally, but if they've served before and they're willing to serve again, unless it's an issue for someone, I would move these 4.
I'll second that.
Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. I have one more special little treat that I'm going to step down to the podium to do, if you all don't mind. Okay, folks, I always love having the younger folks in our community join us here. And today we're privileged to recognize Michael Ott, and his father Rich is here as well. Can you guys come on and join me up here? Mom, you want to come too? Come on. All right, I'm a little jealous, actually, because the kid's got a better swing than I do. So, Michael, I'm going to brag on you for a little minute, okay? Do you mind? All right. So, Michael is 8 years old. He plays on the Winter Park Babe Ruth All-Star 8 and under A team. Played 4 teams over the weekend, and it says here you crushed the competition. What were the final scores? Do you remember what the total score number was? 57 to 2. That's crushing. That's a crushing. Michael juggles 2 sports, baseball and golf. You will see him. He is always with his father's steady hand at the Winter Park 9. He had a recent trip to Scotland for U.S. Kids Golf, the 219 European Championship. He is the only one to make the qualifications for this prestigious event from the state of Florida. One of only 5 Americans his age to make it to Scotland. And he qualified for the Florida Regional at Palm Beach Gardens in July. He's qualified for 3 years in a row to participate in the World Championship at Pinehurst in August. You're keeping your dad on the road a lot. It is a real pleasure to recognize you as a young talent doing some great things representing the city of Winter Park. I know you have some great parents who take care of you and make sure you can get to these. I know your granddad is here too. He joined us today, so thank you very much for that. We have a little gift for you here. This is the first one of these we've actually given out. So you're the first one to receive a Winter Park 9 flag. And it says, Michael, Winter Park is very proud of your hard work and success. Signed by me. Sorry, I wish I could have had Nick Faldo sign it, but this is what I got for you. But you are doing a great job. We just want you to know that the city of Winter Park is very proud of you and the work you're doing, and want to thank your parents too. So I'm going to get you. Want to talk on the microphone? You want to say anything? Rich, why don't you come up and come on. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. Come on. You want to say anything?
Sure. Go ahead. What do you say, Mr. Mayor?
Hey, listen, my children are 14, and if I asked them to come up here, they wouldn't say much either. So I'll turn it over to Dad. We're going to put the pressure on him now. Rich?
Okay. Sure. So, first of all, thank you so much for honoring him.
Well,
We really appreciate that. And, it's a great honor to be representing Winter Park. So we started at the age of 2. In our backyard, we were playing baseball, and he used the bat to hit the ball back to me, and he had a natural swing. So we picked it up ever since then, and it was funny because we had the Babe Ruth Winter Park, the Babe Ruth Baseball League. I got a call from Tim Hammond, which is the commissioner, and his first question was, first of all, he's been selected for the A team, but the next question was, what's his golf schedule like? Because he'll choose golf over baseball. So anyway, I told him we'd work out with that, and anyway, it's just been a great honor for us to come out here and join you. So we want to say thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael. Congratulations, buddy. Let's get a picture of it. Are you going to do it up top? Or? Yeah, come on over here. Slide these out of the way. We're going to keep one and have you stand up. All right? What do you think? Think you can get up on there? I think so. Am I close? Okay, that's all from my report. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I'm going to have Bronx come up first and give you an update on the Lee Road Bennett Executive intersection.
Thank you for the surprise. I thought I was following the auditor selection board tonight, so happy to
No, you gotta follow.
yeah, follow that guy. It's pretty tough, I tell you. I wanted to give you all an update on where we are on the progress of the realignment of Executive Road and Bennett Road as part of the Ravidage development. We've had a meeting with the developer, Mr. Bellows, to have an agreement in place. We extended that last year because there's quite honestly there's a lot of coordination issues out there, specifically with Duke Energy, and so myself, members of our Public Works Department, Mr. D'Alessandro, Mr. Bellows, and his engineer have all been coordinating and now have made initial contact with Duke to get the numbers that it would take to remove basically the guy wire that is supporting the transmission lines on the south side of the road. It's quite an expensive undertaking because when you remove the supporting guy wire, then you have to modify the wires. You have to modify the poles that are currently holding the wires on the other side of the road. So it is quite a complicated situation, but getting the estimates in place from Duke, Mr. D'Alessandro has been fantastic in using his contacts there to get numbers so that we can put together a budget. We are also have begun the intersection design. Mr. Bellows has given us an initial intersection design to our Public Works Department, and Mr. Attaway is working on modifying that in a way that we think will be a bit better situation, so we can make sure we have right and left traffic out of that intersection, make sure that as the numbers grow in that area, we can adequately have that intersection basically operate.
Ron's, just to cut to the chase, how long before we'll have the plan in place that you could take to the commission?
I think we should be able to have it. Basically, all we have to have is an agreement in place. Is all that the contract states. I don't see a reason why we shouldn't be able to have that agreement in place by the end of the year. But then it is the coordination with DOT, and every year he has to perform a traffic analysis to see if the signal is warranted.
He would be the developer, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Bellows?
Yes, sir.
And the second part of that too, Mr. D'Alessandro from our electric utility
Yes, sir.
has also worked with Duke in the past to do some of the work that they were going to contract out. So is that something that we can look at too from a cost savings perspective? I see Mr. Attaway. I would just ask Troy, is it something that the City of Winter Park Electric Utility can take on, the work that we're currently estimating? Okay, thank you. Okay.
I think, but luckily we have a lot of people involved who have good relationships there and are trying to get the best number possible, because when the initial estimates came in for what it would cost, I think they were a bit of a surprise. But I'm hopeful that we can have the agreement in place by the end of the year with a preliminary design, and then it is simply performing the annual traffic evaluation until the intersection can actually be warranted. It doesn't mean once we have the agreement that it will be immediately installed per our contract. It's when it is warranted by the DOT that it will be built and installed.
Okay, questions for Bronze? Commissioner Sprinkle?
Would you clarify for us, this was part of the Ravidage approval process, is that correct? To
Yes.
make that happen?
Yes.
And so that they are synced up now. The only thing that I want to make sure we don't do is send traffic in a cut-through area around that neighborhood. Because I know there have been times I've considered it, so I don't know how we do that. But if when we end up with that, I can easily see some people making that a cut-through. So I just want to make sure we don't do that.
Are you talking about the neighborhood to the north or south or both?
Both?
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Seidel?
Yeah, my biggest concern, I guess, is the timing on this. And for me, I'd be a lot more comfortable if we had a complete design done by the end of the year, that we could, because once the hotel and the apartments get open and get full, that.
Yes, sir.
Right, and so for me, I fully expect that intersection to be going. I don't want to be waiting on the design and negotiating items with Duke and possibly other right away either. So for me, I'd like to see us do whatever we can to accelerate that design and have it in hand, since we know it's something that has to get done eventually.
Yes, sir. Actually, Mr. Bellows has been great in saying, here's the preliminary design, and has authorized our Public Works Department to work right with his engineer that he is paying for to make sure we get the intersection that we want designed the way he wants. or designed the way that we want.
Well, it's
So-
also, ultimately, the DOT is gonna let you know this is how it has to be
Yes, sir.
designed, and that's what I wanna see.
And that coordination has
Ultimately.
begun as well.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Great. Commissioners, anything? Mr. Weaver?
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Are there any underground issues? And the second part is, how is the veterinary clinic being serviced by that realignment?
I will give you two very quick answers of I don't know and I'm not sure, unfortunately. I can try to have those answers for you. If Don and Troy have any more information, I'd be happy to have them answer those questions. And we will send an email to Mr. D'Alessandro. I believe he's in Scotland right now, so maybe asleep. but
Mr.
we'll,
Weaver, regarding underground issues, are you speaking specifically about the electric or any other utilities, or?
Yeah, any of the other utilities. Obviously, we would have to coordinate with Duke with overheads, but I was just wondering if there were sewers or stormwater issues that had to be planned out as well.
Sure they will.
There is a large storm sewer pipe running under that section now. And so the intent is there'll either be an easement or it'll remain open as right-of-way. So, you know, it's not going to necessitate the need to remove or relocate that storm sewer. And that, I mean, I'm assuming that that would be the same for sanitary or other utilities that are in there.
Okay.
We don't have any sanitary that crosses at that intersection. Everything on the south side is handled separately from everything on the north side.
Yeah, all the people who know the answers voted me to give this presentation when I was out of the room, so
Yeah,
I
Dan left the
appreciate you
country.
making them come up here and give answers.
Great, thank you, Bronson. We'll look
Yes,
forward
sir.
to an update on that as you get a little bit further down the road.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, just as you well know, hurricane season is upon us. I just want to assure you that staff is ready. We have a unanimous vote of staff that we're not going to have any hurricanes this year, so, but no, your staff is ready should we have to deal with such. You have your 3 task forces that are currently working. The charter review has held, I think, 3 meetings so far. They're working their way in order through the charter, so they're still in the early parts that deals with districting and with terms and that type of thing is where they are in the process at this point. But they're meeting every other week and moving forward. The library reuse task force has had several meetings. They have been inviting different stakeholders or potential users in to present and talk with the committee. So they're working through that process. And Orange Avenue task force has had 1 meeting, which was just kind of organizational, kind of talking about what it is they're going to be working on and dealing with sunshine law, that type of thing. So they will continue to work throughout the summer. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, Ms. Cooper?
Randy, I have. It's not pressing it that's the problem, it's holding it the entire time. Makes you talk a shorter amount of time. I suppose that's a benefit. Randy, I have a few questions, some of them because I have been away, and I apologize for those. The first one is, I tried to listen to the meeting, and I went back through the minutes, and I noticed that for the library, we're taking over the role of building maintenance, systems, IT maintenance, outdoor maintenance, as well as scheduling and campus promotion. And we're adding a city employee to be the campus manager. And when I looked at the financial impact discussion, it said that the FY19 funding of $1.5 million to the library would probably remain stable. So I get that, but then the second part of that question obviously is, what is the cost to the city of the new employee, the building maintenance, the IT, the outdoor? And if you don't have it off the top of your head, I get it. Am I?
I'll provide you that. No, you're doing good. I'll provide you that information with the whole commission.
Yeah, because I think that's the financial impact we need to have a sensitivity to. Then the next thing I noticed in the minutes is that it said we were going to have a tree preservation program presentation today on the agenda. It said June the 10th. And I don't know if that's scheduled for a later date.
It will come at a later date. It was not ready for today.
Okay, because, right, I knew you did, and it said we were going to get it on June the 10th, and I also know that Drew's been, overwhelmed right now, so I get all of that, but I just wanted to make sure we have a firm date on the calendar that we can count on, so I don't know, if not today, that when it might work for you, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I will get with them.
Very fair. And then the next item, and I've already talked to Bronx about this, so I want everyone to know that he is aware. But Russ, do you have those two maps? We've been talking about the Orange Avenue study area for ages. And since 2017, this is the map that we have always been discussing as a commissioner. It's been in every one of our reports. It was in Dory's presentation. And if you can show the follow-on map. This map was from much later. This was in 2018. It was continuing to show properties south of Fairbanks, properties to the east of Denning, and the properties between the quadrant from Minnesota south have always had this composition. And I bring this up because I think that the public trust is very important. And looking at Orange Avenue was supposed to give us a test case. We were going to do a test to see how we could deal with this mixed use and bring it into our community without the negative consequences that are often seen with some of our surrounding communities. So I think that was it was a charge that involved a certain understanding and a certain expectation that we would stay within these bounds. Can you show the next map? This is the final map that was brought to me just recently, and it's real hard to see. I apologize for that. But we've grown the Orange Avenue study area, overlay area, by 50 properties. Many of them to the north of Fairbanks. One as far north as Comstock, and as we start moving north of Fairbanks, I think that was anticipated to be part of the Fairbanks design study and design guidelines. And to the south, the properties that are all along Orlando Avenue have been added. And I don't know, Randy, if the best way to deal with this is to say, part of it's our responsibility. I do appreciate that when I went back and looked at our resolution to start working this area didn't include a map. Now, we all have been looking at these maps since early 17. That's the dates on the studies and the presentations to the commission that I took those maps out of. And I don't know that Bronx was necessarily aware of this. And I just think that if the objective is to have an open, transparent study where we all come together and create something that we as a community are very proud of. And I know it must be difficult because every property you look at that's not on Orange Avenue, you say, oh, I'd like to do something with that, or I'd like to protect that. But I think for this process, we need to stay within the original bounds of our study area that was brought to the commission for approval when we moved forward with this. And if the commission doesn't want to do that, then I think we need to have that conversation. And so I'm really easy with either saying, Randy, can you talk to staff about staying within the bounds of the original Orange Avenue area, which would have been, can you go back, which would have been this previous presentation, or if we want to have the commission consider a different boundary, I'd love to have a workshop to do that. So all I'm asking is, do you have a preference? But I just would like to have this conversation.
Sure, it's clearly a policy decision of the city commission, and you have, as a commission, you have not voted on a boundary, so if I mean, right, I believe the map as shown, the last map as shown is what you talked to the committee about, is that correct, Bronx? And so, but if the commission wants to go to the original thought process, that's certainly, we're certainly okay with that.
And I did talk
I know
to
that,
Ron, so
yes,
yes.
they were added because,
All good reasons,
yeah,
I think.
there's redevelopment opportunities there, and so when you're looking at a corridor and they're contiguous to the corridor, staff thought it might make sense to add those, but this is clearly a policy decision of the
Right,
commission.
it's 50 additional properties, and I don't know what that 50 equates to as a percentage of the whole, but it's quite a growth, you know, and so I believe that that should be a discussion item.
Happy to address, I know we had a lengthy conversation about this on Friday. As Mr. Knight stated, there never was an official map that was approved by the City Commission. As I began the research of this and looked at the studies back as far as 2003, I think is the earliest time I could find, we started to discuss, and there has been zero consistency with any of those maps either. We looked at it from a planning
Yeah.
standpoint
I
of what.
pulled these maps, Bronx, just so you know, out of 4 different presentations.
Actually, there were 4 maps from the same presentation, actually. But the reason that we added these were because what we're seeing is development trends. We're starting to see a lot of property turnover on that north side of Fairbanks. An overlay district allows you to have greater protection and greater architectural standards than standard zoning does. As we know, those properties are about to transition to something else. They abut single-family neighborhoods if we're talking on the north side of Fairbanks Avenue. I think this gives us additional protections to be able to make sure that those neighbors have something that's a good fit there. As far as going to the west of Denning on the north side of Fairbanks, it was to add additional protections in order to ensure that that property could be developed as future parkland. On the west side of 1792, we now have the situation where the Orchard Hardware Supply building has been vacated. Because of the size of the building, the type of use, and the parking that was provided at the time, there is literally no retail or commercial use that can fit on that property and be utilized without some sort of shared parking agreement with the Colados to the south, who own the bank, who do have excess parking according to our parking standards. And also, the additional properties along 1792 are at an age now where we're starting to see turnover. And again, the overlay will reduce the number of uses, will make sure we can control the type of uses, can give us higher architectural standards, and can give us protections that we hope to see with the rest of it. There's not a great starting or stopping point really anywhere. You can make the argument both ways that we should have it on the north and the south of Fairbanks. I can tell you that Fairbanks and 1792 will be the next areas that we look at from design standards. But as this is our test case, having properties along 1792 and some along Fairbanks, I think are a good idea to have out there. They are adjacent to what we see as the Orange Avenue corridor. They abut the intersection that's a very dangerous intersection where we have the opportunity to include these properties, which can help us to improve some of the intersection flow at 1792 in Fairbanks. So my suggestion at this point would be you have appointed a steering committee. I would love to leave that decision at the steering committee level, bring it up through P&Z, and then get it to the City Commission, because again, we don't have an approved map at this point. If staff's logic is flawed, I hope the steering committee can point us in the right direction, and by the time it gets to the commission, if the boundary is not what you all were looking for, it can certainly be modified.
Yes, I would love to respond to Bronx. Bronx, in this community, we have looked at Orange Avenue numerous times. We want you to be successful. One of the things that you expressed to me right from the start was what was important to you was to rebuild the trust within the community. This map that is on the wall right now is the map that we have been looking at since Dory Stone brought forward the request that we do an Orange Avenue study area. So I'm happy to continue the conversation about this, but I think it needs to be a conversation. And I think as this continues to morph, we are now moving across on a property that actually faces on Comstock is included. Would you put the new map up? I just really it's very difficult, but you see the shadow up there at the corner of Ward Avenue. And I understand, I really have talked to Bronx about this and can see, in fact, that's the reason I think it needs to be a workshop if we're going to talk about it at a parcel by parcel level, because my interest here has a lot to do with the parcel, but has more to do with the very first thing that was important to you, which is rebuilding the trust. And when we go far beyond the bounds of what people have been looking at for a year and a half, almost 2 years, the date on the first one was like May of 2017 and 18. So those maps have been around a long time. And so I guess I appreciate your position, and thank you very much for sharing that. And now I would like to ask my fellow commissioners if I can get 3 nods to either have a workshop where we agree upon an Orange Avenue area, because it is continuing to morph and grow larger and larger. And we have a plan to let this be the test, then move Fairbanks, then move Aloma, then move all our major corridors. But a test is restricted, and it's restricted for a given purpose, and I do think that it is an issue of transparency and community participation and trust, and I would like to see us either agree on a map or take us back to the original overlay, and I can provide you all the documents that have that map in it that was 50 parcels smaller and to the south of Fairbanks, not abutting on the west side. So I would very much like to know if I could get some support to do that, unless, Randy, you have a management position.
No, if the commission, I agree. If 3 commissioners would like to discuss the map, then that's what we want to do.
Well, I would say this, Commissioner, you referenced this as the final map. This is, I don't anticipate this being the final map. You talk about transparency, we have a group that's meeting for full transparency to discuss what this corridor, what could possibly happen in this corridor. So, and you talk about trust in the community, why don't we trust the folks that we've appointed to work with staff to figure out what the proper boundaries of this should be. I don't think this is going to be the final. I'm going to anticipate there's probably changes to this once you all get into the nitty-gritty. I haven't attended any of those meetings. I haven't talked to anybody that's attended those meetings. I assume that the folks that we put in place to have those discussions are having those discussions with you. So I have no problem if you wanted to go larger to start it. I think that should be within your purview to figure out how best to make that corridor work. If it's larger, if it's smaller, I assume you're going to bring to us the plan similar to the original library task force that started out deciding whether or not we need a new library.
Yes, sir. And just for clarification's sake, this is, since I have taken over this process, and we kind of took a step back and started over a little bit with the public input, which I know there were some folks who were concerned about that. This is the draft map that we have used for all public meetings, and everything that has been advertised to the public has been this draft. So there haven't been multiples out since we started looking at this. I do understand that my predecessor and maybe my predecessor's predecessor have all had different maps as this has been discussed, but yeah, if there is desire for staff to modify this, we are certainly happy to do so. Would look for any direction the commission would like to offer.
Well, I think one person is interested and one person isn't. We have 3 more.
Let's start to the right.
So,
Mr. Seidel.
All right. Well, because I like to analyze things, you would always like to analyze more and end up with less. You don't want to get to a point where you didn't look at enough to make something work. And the one thing I'll tell you that I would like to see work is a greenway going from Mead Gardens up to MLK Park. And so what I've seen is they've added some parcels that could help make that happen. So for me, that's kind of where I'm at, is I'm okay to look at a bigger area, in this case to achieve some kind of greenway, and then see what sorts out. On the north side of Orange Avenue, you know, I would like to see,
Sorry, which one's?
The north side of Fairbanks at Denning, I believe. is
yeah,
what
if
he's
you,
referring
if you run it along Denning, on the east side of Denning, right, we have a green space along the east side of Denning heading down towards Mead Gardens, and that open space goes across Fairbanks, and then on the north side of that lake is where our park is. So you could have a green corridor. Correct, so they've added the ones on the north side of Fairbanks, right, so that they could include that. And so that could be part of a greenway that comes out of the Orange Avenue analysis. And then, so on the south side of Denning, I've had conversations with folks where it would be nice, in my mind, okay, and I have talked to people that are on this, I think. I may or may not have, I can't remember. But, you know, if you move the existing right-of-way up against the railroad tracks, kind of leave Orange Avenue alone where it is, but allow any new developments to take place in that space in between, that can make for better circulation back there. So now if you're gonna look at the north side where they've added, there may be some other rights of way that can be modified to help make it more efficient for transportation, as well as for the type of development we would like to see. In my mind, I don't want to see development up against the road. That's what I don't want to see, the buildings getting higher on the road. That's my personal opinion, okay? So this would allow
You got
that.
me on that one.
Right, so this
A
would
nice
allow some
golden
of,
triangle.
maybe some, you know, higher buildings back away from the road where you're not gonna see them. So that's why I say I'm okay them starting with a larger area, and then if they chisel it down as a group, I'm happy for them to chisel it down, but I don't wanna tell them they can't go there if it's gonna make sense for everybody to do something there. So that's why, when he's kind of expanded it, I say when you do studies, it's easier to go smaller. It's a lot harder, like you just are showing right now, to come back and say, well, we want to include this parcel. And if you do that at a later date, it's much harder than if you do it right now.
What I would be looking for all of this is a schema or a vision of a picture of what it could become. And so I don't have any hard lines, and I don't really want them now. And I didn't even realize that we had those hard lines, because over the time we've been talking about this, I didn't know there was a start and a stop place. All these people already own their property, and all these people are gonna either do what, you know, this overlay might allow or not. But the bottom line of it is I'm looking for a vision of what it can become, not so much of a start and a stop place.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bronx, you and I spoke about the parcels on the northwest side of the Denning and Fairbanks.
Yes, sir.
And could you, I'll take a minute to ask my question, but I'd like for you to explain to everyone here why that particular set of parcels would be included. And Commissioner Seidel and I talked before I was a commissioner quite a bit about the Fairbanks Denning. Did you like that? About the Fairbanks Denning bottleneck there, and making those lights on Fairbanks faster. So, and you and I have spoke about the center turn lane, possibly down to Pennsylvania, to relieve some of the traffic that the development on Orange may cause. But can you talk a little bit more about including the other lots north of Fairbanks in this, what your rationale is there, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I would like to just remind folks, this is my opinion, not the opinion of the committee, the commission, or anybody else. It's just your professional staff bringing what we think is the best map forward as a base to start with the committee. So this is no one's opinion but my own. I just do want to make sure you understand that. But that northwest area, as you stated, gives us that connection to Mead Garden is something that's very important to us. Fixing the intersection at Fairbanks and Denning, if you're able to put a dedicated left, east and westbound on that, you could increase traffic flow to a degree that I'm probably not qualified to answer, but we do have an actual qualified person who is studying that to look at what could happen with that. And it also protects that area that it only can be utilized as future green and park space for the expansion of MLK Park. Everything would be grandfathered in as it is right now, but would offer that area of protection. And quite honestly, when we look at some of the regional stormwater issues that we're facing in this area, that area could very well come into play on what we may need to utilize for some offsite improvements to help a lot of the smaller parcels right now that flood during high water events.
And what about the property that actually fronts on Comstock?
That's the street just north of Fairbanks.
Can you go to the, Russ, one forward? It's the last one, this one, thank you.
Oh, okay. That one is under common ownership, and we've talked about making that into a green space and possibly even, I don't want to get too deep into this because it hasn't been brought before our steering committee, but looking at some bike ped improvements that would start back into that area and would give a green buffer in that area. Again, that green connection that we like from MLK Park all the way down to Mead Gardens.
So I don't think we should, I'm sorry, Mr. Weir, were you?
Yeah, just one more thing. Bronx, in your professional opinion, do you think it would be a good idea for the city to start talking more about the stormwater management and possibly acquiring some of the properties we just talked about in advance of development rather than doing it later?
I would, of course, leave that decision to the elected officials to make, but any way that we can make regional stormwater upgrades, I think are always worth considering. You might have an engineer up there who could give you a better answer than me on that one, but yeah. But always, I mean, if we have opportunities to improve the current situation, I think we should always explore those. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't think there's three to restrict. Hold, excuse me, Commissioner, I have the chair. So let's, if we don't have three, then let's move on from that. I think that there's, seems to be folks that want to turn this over to the steering committee and have them provide some recommendations. Commissioner, you have the floor. Commissioner Cooper.
No, I think I'm done. I want to go on record as saying that I really do believe that expanding this to the north of Fairbanks is a very slippery slope, and I'm not at all comfortable, and probably won't ever be supporting it, to be honest with you. I do consider the area within our central business district and our west side to be more sacred ground, and I would have preferred you demonstrating your success on Orange Avenue before making that creep. And you know that, so that's not saying anything, but I just, I believe that going north before we have proven ourselves could come back to bite us one day. And so I personally appreciate the discussion. I really do appreciate the discussion.
I would just say, Commissioner, you're almost talking as though the assumption is we're going to make these changes.
So hold on,
We're
folks.
kind of doing the analysis to see.
I would also
where
be
we
very
go.
cautious about leading a team. We have amazing people in this community, and everybody here has appointed people to that committee to be advisors. So rather than say, I'm not sure I could ever support anything north, let's let them do their job. Let's try not to steer the steering committee. Let's give them the opportunity to impart their wisdom with direction from staff to come back to us. If the recommendation is faulty by any member of this commission's position or thoughts, then that's certainly the time to discuss it. But rather than limiting a steering committee, let's just give them some faith, give them the ability to have the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, they could come back with your recommendation, right? They could say, don't go north of Fairbanks, right?
Well, but one thing is, I just do believe that when we send staff off and ask them to do something, and we have a geographic boundary that we have considered the definition for a year or two, we should have discussed it at the time of the resolution, and that was that was our failing on that. So we could have had this discussion then. But I accept the will of the commission and charge on.
Will do.
Charge on. So other than that, Randy, those were the only three things that I had. Thank you.
Any other questions for the city manager? Mr. Weaver?
Yeah, one more. So I'm somewhat in support of Commissioner Cooper's fears here in that it sounds like this map can be as fluid as it wants to be. And I think there ought to be some limitations on it. And, you know, we're going up 1792 and across 1792 now and north of Fairbanks. So at some point we have to say quit.
Understood.
I think the steering committee will come, if there's an opportunity to handle stormwater, parking, that's close to these boundaries, I think that's probably worth a consideration to assist, right? I mean, I think we would all agree if there's an opportunity. So I think it is fluid up until a certain point.
They were interested in
once you
discussing
all-
the map at the
Once you
first
guys get
meeting.
to a point, yeah, I think it's, so I think you've heard the concern that this
Yes, sir.
doesn't continue to creep, but at the same time, I think that there's, you know, go do your job.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Anything else
mean-
for the city manager?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Since we're all talking
so maybe-
stormwater and, you know, I would like to see some low-impact development. I'm sure you're on that, Brian.
Sir, that is
All right, thank
on
you.
the list of ideas.
Mr. Weaver.
So Maitland is the northern limit then, right?
We will try to stay south of that border, yes, sir.
Is this for the
Thank you,
city
Brian.
manager or Bronze? Please, Mr. Seidel.
Next topic, right? Next topic. We're all good? Next topic? Okay. Randy, I guess I wanted to just kind of get some clarification on the old library task force with the appraisal that we got in and have a little
Good
discussion
That's a good question.
about that, because it kind of the way I looked at it, it almost gave us an upper bound and a lower bound.
Mr. Seidel, can I just reiterate what I said before? I think it's a great question to ask for some clarification on it, but I just caution about steering that committee too far. Like, let them go do their job too before we get into too much of it. I think it's worthwhile because those evaluations were pretty drastic.
Interesting is the word I like to use.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess that's what I was just trying to understand, Randy, is the intent of those numbers that you gave us, you know, from the 3 million to the 8 million, we could be anywhere in between, and is that what they were trying to set, I guess? That was my question.
And we have not reached out to the appraiser and asked that question, but it's my understanding from the report is the upper end was an assumption that the property could just redevelop without the building. And the lower end value was if someone were forced to use that building, you know, and make it an office building or whatever, but use that
So
structure.
same zoning,
Not-
one dirt, one no.
They're both, same zoning for both uses, but not the R4 zoning that currently exists.
Did we pay for somebody to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we will reach out to them and get clarification. That was the assumption I drew was that's the difference in those two values, just reading the reading report. But we will reach out to them and get clarification on that point.
Ms. Cooper?
Randy, that was actually the first item during my commissioner talk that I wanted to talk to you about, so I'd like to do it now if you don't mind. That appraisal was based on assumptions, and assumptions were taken from discussions with staff. And that piece of property has a zoning of R4. It has a future land use of institutional. And the question that was asked staff was, can we assume that the city commission would be good with making these both the same zoning? And all of us up here, except Todd, you didn't get a chance to participate, were very pleased that we made the policy decision for the city that there will be no more R4.
Right.
That now, and I know if you were given the technicalities of the fact that it's zoned R4, it does have a different future land use. We are the owner. If you're going to go back to the appraiser, I really believe that this commission said no more R4.
Totally agree, and I believe they were told
It needs
that.
to be
So I'll-
R3 would be my request to you, that I don't, of course, I would like it to stay institutional, but if they are going to calculate it on the most, right, then R3, I think, is what we should cap it at, because we told this entire community we weren't doing any more R4, so we shouldn't be allowing those kind of expectations to float around out there.
Totally agree, and I believe that's,
Thank you.
I believe they understood that going in too, so I'll verify that also. Thank you.
They priced it, I mean, they figured those calculations up with the assumption that it would be R4 and it would have all of its parking underground, so that's the maximum intensity of land use. And I get it, when you're getting an appraisal, you want it to be as high as possible, but I don't think it's in our best interest, after we've just told our community we're not gonna have any more R4, to have an appraisal floating around that talks about the best and highest use based on conversations with city staff coming out at R4 development. That's all. Thank
So
you.
I would just remind though too, that when we said no more R4, that's new. We said people were grandfathered into R4. Now, Commissioner, I stand with you. I don't believe that should be R4. I would have a challenge supporting that. Again, I don't want to handcuff our folks, but I think you do have support for that move forward. But I just want to be clear on the record. The record was that there's no new R4, but yeah, people couldn't ask for it. So let's just be clear on that. Okay? Any other questions for the city manager? Randy, I think you set a record. That may be the
That concludes
longest
my
one.
short report.
Yeah, that was longer than the rest of the meeting. Boy, Mr. Ardeman's just nervous now.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I'll pass, Mayor, thank you.
Anything, Kurt? No? Nothing? Any questions for the city attorney? No? Thank you all. We'll take citizen comments closer to 5 o'clock. Consent agenda. What say you folks?
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, I heard Commissioner Sprinkle.
I pressed my button. I get it.
I heard Commissioner Sprinkle and Commissioner Seidel. Let's open up the floor to public comment. Anybody wishing to address the commission on item 9, now is your time. Seeing none, we'll close the floor to public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public hearing. We are going to go right to number 11, the social media policy. Clarissa, thank you. I know this has been one of these things that has been, you've been working on this for quite some time, and I apologize. I know it keeps getting moved back and moved on, so thank you for bringing this back to us. It's important, but I know you have been very patient with us seeing it, so thank you.
Mayor, would you like me to read it?
Please, Mr. Arden.
Resolution number blank, a resolution of the City Commission of Winter Park, Florida, repealing and replacing the policy governing city use of social media and external internet to update and clarify the city's policies governing city use of social media, providing for conflicts and an effective date.
Thank you. Clarissa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And we have been talking about this revision of the policy. It's been 10 years since we had a 3-2 vote right here in this dais in 2009 to approve the use for the city to use Facebook. We were one of the few municipalities that actually said yes to Facebook when it first came out 10 years ago. And what a great decision that was, although 3-2. So we definitely have grown in the past 10 years. And we started first with just one Facebook page. And in 10 years, we now have 27 social media accounts. And we've grown from just the city having it to now 3 other departments have been represented, which is our police, fire, and parks. And each of those departments are here. Jason, Chief, and Pam have staff all devoted to keeping our information up to date and our community informed of all of the different initiatives we have, in addition to our big City of Winter Park social media sites, which Craig and Stephanie are here as well. You know, a lot of people think when you see City of Winter Park, or if you see Parks and Recreation, or Winter Park Police Department, or Winter Park Fire Department, you think it's just the agency, that there's not people behind it. And there are people, there are faces, there are actual staff that's behind those posts, and it's easy for the community to think it's just an entity, but entities are made up of people. And it's because of all those on all these different departments, teams, that we're able to share our information. To combined, if we added all of our followers on all of our social media accounts, we're reaching an audience of over 90,000 people online with a simple simple tools of social media that involve staff time, but no additional costs. Just from when I prepared the agenda item, our numbers have increased at least by 30 more followers in just the past week. Our emergency information page, we did a promotion just last week, and that increased 100 new followers. So it's quick, it's fast, it's engaging, and it's effective in getting information out. What you have in front of you is a resolution, and worked hard with our city attorneys to make sure that we had our information correct. It is a complete rewrite of our 2009 policy. So when you see the red line, you'll see our old policy completely redlined with the new ones. And it has a clear distinction now, the two types of formats that we're using social media for. The two different formats is a speech doctrine and designated or limited public forum. And this gives us the ability to use social media as a sole expression of our perspective. Where we can, if the tool allows us to turn off comments and to just share our perspective on a certain issue. Now, we can also transition, which this policy allows us to designate it as a designated or limited public forum where we allow comments. Now, comments can be positive and or negative, so the team that I mentioned earlier is constantly monitoring these accounts for those types of comments. And clearly the policy defines what comments are appropriate and which are not appropriate. And our city attorneys and staff has really looked at that as far as what is appropriate and not. And those are addressed in Section E of public participation. You'll also see that there's sections on there about public records and sunshine law. This is a method of communication that we all use for city business, and it does discourage any of our elected officials or our board members or even employees about posting about city business. And if that does happen, then those comments and discussions within those posts, and I've talked to each of you about that, is that it does become public record. And so it does talk about that in there. I believe most of you have personal pages, and I don't, outside of the mayor who has a mayor page, we do have him as part of our service. It's Archive Social, and Archive Social is a service that archives any of the posts or comments that are made. So in the event that any public records requests are made on his Winter Park Mayor Facebook pages, then we would provide that to the public to fulfill the public records request. And if each of you would like a professional page outside of your personal page to create that, then we can help you with that as well, and then also archive that as part of our Archive Social platform. Or you can continue to maintain your personal pages and not use that as a forum for public business. We did create, after the hurricanes of last couple of years ago, Hurricane Irma, we did create a specific emergency information page for hurricanes. Our followers on Facebook is about 12,500, and about 14% of those are Winter Park residents. So when we were communicating about the hurricane, we were communicating to a large population that wasn't concerned about our power outages or our trees down, but they were concerned enough to comment. However, they may not have been part of the community. So in order to address those specific Winter Park resident hurricane-related topics or emergencies, then we did create the City of Winter Park Emergency Information page, and we'll be using that, Twitter, and our city website to get information out in addition to emails and our traditional tools.
I would tell you that was a really nice resource, though, because people from outside of our community saw how great the response was from the professionals within the community.
Yes, and what would happen is we would refer people to our Facebook page, our emergency Facebook pages for those updates. Craig and I were up at the EOC along with many, many other employees, and at 2 a.m. they're asking questions about when is my power, going to be restored. So in our world of technology, we went from 2004 when we had hurricanes and we were talking about the large citywide issues as a whole, and then you get to Hurricane Irma, you're talking right to my house. And so the messages and the amount of communication that was coming in and questions and inquiries, through so many channels of communication, was difficult and challenging to maintain. So this is an effort to streamline emergency information. We also have our other social media pages that would direct people to the emergency information page, and then that information can be shared on the other pages, but that would be the primary resource. And so I do ask that you do share that to your family and friends that live in the city, so they are aware of that resource that we will be using. And so those are the basic changes that we have, and recommend approval for that.
Great. Questions for Clarissa? Ms. Sprinkle?
Okay, I'm not sure that I understood this correctly. Did you say that if individual commissioners wanted to be a part of the public records, they could have their own page and be part of that?
Yes.
And I would like for us as a commission to discuss that before we did it, just simply because that could get to be quite confusing for people. So have you seen that happen where individual commissioners had a page? And I just want to make sure we don't get into a commissioner talking about what's going to be discussed up here, because we're going to get into trouble if we do that.
Anything related to the city, they can make a request on. So even on your own personal page, if you talk about the city, they can make a request of it. The difference is, and the reason I have a page was if there's anything specifically related to the city, I will put it on that page so Clarissa can manage and have access to that page. So if there's a public records request on anything I post, she can access that page and get it out to the public. That's what it's for.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't want us to all have individual pages. That is my issue. So is that something we want before we do it? Because if we do, I just can predict that's going to create some issues for us.
And I'm not advocating for each of you to have your own page. What I am saying that is if you do choose to talk about city information on your personal pages, it opens up your personal pictures, your birthdays, your anniversaries, all of that to public record as well. So if you do feel compelled to share information that comes before you, then the best route to take would be to create your own Facebook page, and then we archive that. Now, you do not have to archive it with us, but you would be then responsible to share the public records. Yeah. So that's completely up to your discretion.
Mr. Seidel?
Yeah, Clarissa, so I'm just trying to get some clarification. So like the other day, you guys sent out the hurricane preparedness Facebook post.
Yes.
And so I just shared that.
Yes.
On my page.
Correct.
So I don't think anyone commented. I didn't
No.
comment, I just shared it.
Correct.
So
And that's
do I
fine.
need to do anything special because of that?
No. Where the public records request would come in is the discussions that occur on a post. So you could simply even share a post about you being at a parade. Now, that's not of concern. What becomes concern is if people decide to use that post and start asking you questions about Orange Avenue, or about anything that's coming before you, and then you engage in conversation with that, and then let's say one of you or a board member, then board members start chiming in. So truly the best practice is to not talk about that on your pages. But if you do feel compelled you need social presence to talk about city business, then that's where I would recommend you create a professional page, and then we would archive that for you. And it's simple. I don't have access to your page. I don't have access to the mayor's page. The only access site we would have is to garner those public records for the request.
You mean you're not friends with the mayor?
No.
Not even in real life.
Not socially.
Commissioner Cooper?
My questions are a little different because anytime we start talking about the city's viewpoint, I don't know where that's defined. I don't know what the city's viewpoint is. Is that the viewpoint of the city manager or the communications department, or does that mean it's been voted on by the commission? I don't know what the city's viewpoint is.
You're referring
Typically,
to something specific, she said? 'Cause I'm
No,
trying
just
to-
in here, it numerous times it
Gotcha.
refers to the city's viewpoint. And I just want to make sure we all have understanding of what constitutes the city's viewpoint.
yes, and typically most of the posts we make are very neutral. And it would never be on a minority status. So it would always be the vote of the commission or the action a commission is taken. But it would never be on the stance of a 1 or 2 commissioners. It would be 3 or more, always, on
Basically-
any
it's
type of
basically an
communication tool we use.
administrative
And
position.
philosophically, at some point, I would love for us to get to the place where our goal in life is to educate, present pros and cons, but I do appreciate the fact that once we have voted on something, that is the commission's, that is the city's viewpoint. I was just curious beyond that, how we define, if there is a definition maybe that goes beyond simply things that we've voted on.
I would
No.
offer, though, that's administrative, like for something that's an administrative
facts,
action that
and that's one
would come
concern.
out. But even Randy from, the city manager from an administrative position he represents the city to the public.
Right.
So as long as it's not a policy issue that comes before the commission,
Then there's-
the position of the city is really coming out of the
I like
manager's
that
office.
definition. I don't know, perhaps we should define, I mean, I know we define terms. Perhaps you should think about whether that's a term you might want to define. One thing that I really liked in here, and I think the public needs to be aware of this, is that the city will never, and I loved this, the city will never remove a post because of the viewpoint. And that's important for people to understand as they're worried about their personal rights and freedom of speech. And it's very clear here that that's not going to happen. Viewpoint will not be the reason your post is removed. However, harassing speech, and I was a little confused, I'd like you to clarify that, I don't know what this means. It says, harassing speech may include, and this is the things they can remove, persistent or unwelcome communications. Now, I'll be honest with you, I get a lot of persistent and unwelcome communications. I mean, I've been at this for 12 years. I hear from you guys all the time. And after I've heard it about 20 times, I got it, But also it goes on to say city employees or city elected officials or appointed officials, which is utilized to deliver direct or perceived threats. I get that, but I don't understand what it means when it says threats of removing tangible work benefits of the subject or creates a hostile work environment. I got the hostile work environment. I don't understand threats of removing tangible work benefits. I don't know what that means. And if you're,
Sounds like attorney talk.
yeah, but the attorney needs to clarify it.
Commissioner, where is that language in the policy? I'm looking
This is,
for
I'll
it.
be happy to, and we don't need to do it today. Just take a look at it and see if we can make it simpler. It's on the agenda packet. You probably don't have that. It's on page 6 of the ordinance, and it's under item Roman numeral 6. And you don't have to answer that now. Just take a look and see if I can't understand it. It's possible people trying to comply with this won't
It
understand.
probably came from a case, but we'll look at it.
Yeah, just please, make it clear so people know what it is. And otherwise, I would say to you, thank you, this is really hard work. When you're dealing with freedom of speech, it's very hard. And God bless you, it appears you've done a hell of a good job. And I am curious if you should define, yeah, so this, excuse me, might be. If you can think about the city's viewpoint and get some kind of definition of that. And if we can clean up the language on that one, and other than that, I'm 100% on board. Great job. Thank you.
Well, and I do want to remind you, I mean, this whole effort for social media is a huge team effort. I mean, I know our police department, our fire department, our team, parks, I mean, we're looking at this at all times of the day. And so I just stand here to represent the other departments that are also helping to share information. So it's a lot of work on their end as well.
Mr. Weaver, did you have something?
I was just going to ask the city attorney if he's had time to review this thing. It looks pretty long and complicated.
Sure, yes, we have. We have one of the lawyers in our firm that is a constitutional, don't want to call him expert, but because he's not board certified, but that's what he does primarily is constitutional law. The freedom of speech issue, not only with this, but with signage is very difficult, invocations, and he's the reason there's some of this language in here that sounds confusing that's coming from our United States Supreme Court cases. But yes, I've read it, but I think Commissioner Cooper's comments are well taken, and we'll clean that up, I think, a little bit. Help?
Mr. Saida? Anything, Ms. Sprinkle? No. Clarissa? So you're looking for a motion to approve this tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll move it.
I'll second it, and then get Sarah her
Okay.
own Facebook page.
Commissioner, you have your questions. Are you comfortable supporting this in the future if it can always come back to be, before second, can we have a second reading on this?
It's
Can
single
we?
reading, Mayor. We
I know,
can.
Can we make it a second reading to address any of the concerns that Commissioner
approve
Cooper
it and
has?
then modify it, or you
So-
can delay it. It's your choice.
So I don't think we need an amendment to do that, but Commissioner, if you'd like, I can support this coming back to us for a second reading to address any concerns you have. I'm not as concerned as you are, but if that's gonna really hold you up, we can certainly look at the rewrite.
It's not going to hold me up as long as staff's going to take care of it, I feel. It's just a little
Yeah.
confusing the way
Okay.
it's written.
Good, so we have a motion, we have a second. If I remember correctly, Commissioner Sprinkle and Commissioner Seidel was the second. Thank you. Okay, Clarissa, we have that.
Great.
So let's open up the floor to public comment. Anybody wishing to address the commission on item 11, now is your time. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the floor to public comment. Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, I just had a quick question or comment, because we always get these emails about like Sarah's Facebook is stolen or something, and it's not Sarah, but I guess it's someone impersonating it on the website. Do we have controls to kind of,
Yeah,
Y-
I'm confused.
yeah, no, I just meant as like, is there anything we're doing prevention-wise in our IT to make sure that, there's not fraudulent people signing up as Greg Seidel's Facebook page for the city, so
Well-
that someone is on my Facebook page and it's not me?
Right, there is methods, and in fact, Stephanie just told us today that all of our accounts are verified. So there is a process that you go through, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, in which you are the verified official entity or person. And so that is a process that we do take for our city accounts.
And we do,
Monitor.
we do monitor. I'm told that the number of emails blocked far exceed the number of emails we receive. The amount of spam and the amount of fraudulent stuff that comes in, tremendous amount is blocked. Entire city staff, and I believe the commissioners were forced to do it too, a recent training on how to recognize phishing emails and that type of thing. And so we take it very seriously. We have a person whose full-time job is cybersecurity. And so it's a big deal. We have a lot of other cities that have been hacked, and it can happen to any of us with one employee that's just not diligent all the time and clicks on one of those emails, could compromise our system. So it's a challenge.
Have we had situations where someone was representing themselves as one of the commissioners? I don't know that.
No, I haven't
I've
seen
not
any
seen that.
online, but we get the mayor and commissioner's email that Sarah needs to update her email password. And it's like to all of us, and it's got her name on it. That one comes through to me every now and then. Yeah, yeah. I know. But it's like to all of us, but then it's got Sarah's name.
Maybe that's why you keep getting it. Maybe I ought to get it.
Well,
You know I'm not gonna forward it to you, right?
Randy, if I was laying odds, this was not the item I thought, social media is not the item I thought you would comment on. So I'm glad you're becoming much more familiar with our social media platform, Randy. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Cindy, would you please, Mr. Weaver, do you have something?
Yeah, just one more thing for the city manager. I'm sure all the other commissioners and mayor get, on a regular basis, emails that are called spam. And if we delete those, is that a public records violation, or are we covered by IT having copies of that stuff?
If you like, so those if it's spam and it's not related to city business, delete it. It's fine to delete it, but I don't know what IT actually does as far as screening those.
I'll address the other side of that. The city does, if it comes to your city-provided email address, the city archives all of those. So even if you delete it, we have the public record. The city has the official public record. Now, if it comes to your personal email and it's city business, it's up to you to make sure that gets into the public record. So my best advice would be for you to forward that to your regular email address, your city email address.
But I try to unsubscribe to all the junk that comes. I hope that
That's the best.
helps. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, but sometimes that's phishing too, and when you unsubscribe, it just fishes to add more. So, folks, let's put an end to this. Cindy, please read the roll on this.
Commissioner Seidel?
Yes.
Commissioner Sprinkle?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper?
Yes.
Commissioner Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Leary?
Yes, Clarissa, team, thank you all. I know it's not your primary area, so thank you for spending so much time on that. Folks, let's open up the floor to the public comment. Anybody wishing to address the commission on any item that's not on this agenda, now is your time.
Good evening, Mary Daniels, 650 Canton Avenue. I would just like to make a suggestion, and it concerns the Charter Committee. And I was able to be at the last meeting, and prior to my being nominated or appointed, I had requested a copy of the meetings prior to it. And I thought it was my computer. And I used my sister's computer, I used a computer at the Heritage Center. You can barely hear it. And I'm thinking that probably, and I know the meeting that I was at, it was very hard to hear what everyone was saying. And I think it would be great to recommend that they use a mic, even for recording, because I think recording it, she would be able to hear what they're saying. It's very hard to hear. So I think that would be wise to add that to that committee, that they use mics when they're talking. That way the recording can be recorded properly and you would be able to hear it. And also people within the audience can hear it also. Thank you.
Ms. Dennis. Randy, would you tell me, where are those meetings held? Are they held in here?
No, sir, they've been held at the community center.
And how are they recorded? Just with the simple old machine that you put on the table?
I just have a little tiny tabletop. I can't reach that far. God. Which one?
So
Sorry,
rather
I
than
can't
sitting,
reach
so
it.
to answer that question,
Yeah,
Cindy,
so-
you have the old machine with the tabletop?
Right.
Can we get them a mic set up there, or can we change locations if it is indeed an issue? I mean,
We'll find
is
out.
an issue? I haven't been at one of those.
Well, but hey, if we do that, why are we gonna pick one committee to do that too and not all of
Well,
them?
I think
That's
that's a
my
great question.
problem.
Can we just make sure that all all meetings should be able to be deciphered, listening to the audio tape? And I know we just spent time, Russ, thank you for our new microphones in here, which I think were really helpful. This table, if it's open, they can have meetings in here. So, okay? Next.
Cindy.
But let me clarify, I don't think we should just do that for one, for all, okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry, but just to finish that, I don't think we should tell you how to do it, but all meetings need to be decipherable from an audio perspective. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, good afternoon. Barbara Chandler, 730 Minnesota Avenue. So I'm here with two different topics, I guess I should say. First, I wanted to say thank you to the commissioners and the mayor in appointing or hearing the community's voice in appointing Mary Daniels. So we are grateful for that on behalf of the Coalition for Access and Representation. And then secondly, the second topic was around the Tuskegee Airmen. We also wanted to I personally wanted to express from the Heritage Center as the day-to-day manager, the community support that showed up. And not just our local community, but people who came from out of town, had visited and heard about it, people out of Titusville, and showed monetarily support, as well as just random acts of, our appreciation. So I wanted to extend that. June the 22nd, it's Juneteenth, and this is a verbal invitation. We've been partnering with the Winter Park Public Library as well as the community center, and we will be doing a rededication for the Tuskegee Airmen. And those hours are from 10 to 2. We are still working on the marketing material, but I know time is moving. So again, we wanted to say thank you to the community and just everyone in showing their support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Okay, folks, we'll close the floor to public comment. Do we have another? Oh, okay. If there's anyone else after this, if you would line up so I just know to keep the floor open, that would be helpful.
Hi.
Good
My name's
afternoon.
Camille Kohler, and up until a month and a half ago, I was working back at the city of Winter Park for Hart Utilities. I worked for Progress Energy prior to you city taking over, and then Troy enticed me to come and work with y'all for the 5 years. Well, I left in 2010, took a break, went back into line work a few years ago. Got with Dan, and he said, you know, work through that, we'll get you back on. Brought me back with Hart. The problem is the timing has been questionable, because I came back in January, and there's a couple of amendment letters in Hart's, I guess, their contract, because it's up for vote tonight. So I'm going to read what I wrote, so I don't know if, because I have a bad way of going off. I'm here because I care and work for this community for most of my adult life. I worked for Progress Energy when Winter Park took over the distribution system, and then came for Winter Park. 25 years in the business. When the Winter Park core values, ethics and compliance, professionalism, diversity, inclusion, innovation, customer service, teamwork, especially safety, is your top priority. So my involvement has been personal. The opportunity to come back I considered a blessing and a second chance. I had resigned my position with Hinkle & McCoy, who is a contractor for JEA, Jacksonville, and I was driving back and forth from Maitland to Jacksonville every day. Hart Utilities brought me in through the IBEW on a capacity of leadership. What became more prominent from the beginning is a lack of concern for safety and a commitment to excellence. The core values that were started from this endeavor for Winter Park to be considered their own entity. PPE, your personal protective equipment, rubber gloves. Lock to lock is what we considered underground lock. You open up the transformer, you have your rubber gloves on, you close it, you lock it back. Your gloves. Cradle to cradle. You have your rubber gloves on, you go up, you come back down, you're in your rubber gloves. Communication between Winter Park Engineering and Hart do the same job over and over again and over again. I have been to, and I have only been here 60 days, which I was laid off on my 60th day per the contract with the IBEW, because I was asking a lot of questions.
So your 3 minutes are up, but I'm happy to entertain a bit more time if you need it.
Yeah.
Can you get through it in another minute?
I'm going to try.
Okay, so let's put another minute on, but I would tell you that this commission, personnel decisions are not under our purview. There's only two, actually, that are: city manager and the city attorney. So this really has to kind of go up through the management structure of the city and the administration.
I just think since all of you are elected officials.
That's why I said we're happy to hear it, but the decision-making really can't happen at this level.
Is that part of my minute?
No, I'll give you the extra minute. Cindy, would you please time me in on that?
Communicate. So, but doing the same job over and over, Mr. Bellows has been extremely, I've worked with him for several years. Like I said, I worked in this area for 25. The senior center moving to just a splice box off his property, ultimately need 2 extra new 4-inch bore duct pull more wire because there was no communication between developer, builder, city engineer, and the contractor, which ended up costing the city of Winter Park money because nobody's absorbing this. Respect for the people's property and courtesy to the public. Example for that is urinating in the street, and as a courtesy, pour some water on it. With the gentleman that I worked with, since I'm the only female, I did ask this for an employee, and I was cussed, berated, and essentially cursed out. And he told me to screw these people. Setting outages up at a time when people are home versus when they're not. Example, Valentine's Day was a Friday, February 14th. Every one of you that lives in Winter Park lost your power because they were shedding load from OUC. Now, when you're trained properly, you go through a switching order, and you could turn around and you load break and you close switches and open and load. And you don't just turn off the city. So they went to 2 switch gears, opened, dropped the whole city. It was midnight. A lot of you remember it. I don't know if you were up, out, or celebrating or what, but the whole city went from one half of darkness to the other side of the city going to the other half of darkness. I have never, ever in my life seen anything like this.
Okay, so I'm going to end your time now. I appreciate the commentary. I think the city management has heard your concerns. I would appreciate it if what you have written down is also handed over to the city manager for him to address. And we can.
Is there any way I can set a meeting up with the city manager?
You can certainly set a meeting up with the city manager. Absolutely.
Okay.
I have your
And did you fill out a yellow sheet for the city clerk? That's how they will get in touch with you.
excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Okay, folks, anybody else? Then we're going to close the floor to public comment. Let's start down the line. Mr. Seidel.
I had, it's more of a question for Randy, I guess, but just kind of for the rest of the commission, just kind of highlight what the budgeting schedule is as to what's, because I got some questions about when we're going to start working on budget. And I don't like to give wrong answers, so I let you answer.
The budget will be presented at the first meeting in July. We're finalizing it now, putting the document together, and hopefully we'll get it out to you, ahead of time. But the presentation happens at first meeting in July.
Do you have the total schedule, Randy, of the steps? It's a pretty
Sure.
Prescriptive
So that-
process. Would you email that out to the city commission?
Sure.
Thank you.
Or is that something we usually post, or do we usually just?
It's part of the budget document when it's
Okay.
presented.
It's shared in all the agendas.
Yes,
as we go into it.
Okay, great. And I can't recall if the farmer's market was before or after our last meeting. So, because we
I
skipped a meeting in there.
think you
We had the
addressed
40th
it.
anniversary, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. No, and then we also
You just
had.
want double thanks for going there?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
appreciate it. My first role as vice mayor. That's exciting. Got to introduce everybody. Yes, I think we did, because Mr. Felder was there and we talked about it here. So, but we also had, I believe, the chamber event where we had the legislative session, I thought, which was very beneficial for all of us. And it was interesting, the point that Scott Maxwell made about the change in 15 years and went all the way one way to the other. And, I'd rather see it mixed, personally. But that's all I got.
Commissioner Sprinkle.
I'm going to comment on a couple of things I've been doing. One is I went to the holiday retirement headquarters. They have 250 retirement homes across the country. They are headquartered here in Winter Park. Their CEO is a woman who's brilliant. Her office is in the middle of that space. It was just a really exciting place to be. I loved seeing what's going on in our town. Not just that, but Linda Stewart. I know that Todd was at the same one that I went to when I went to her update. We have 2 more updates from the legislators. We have Joy Goff's coming up on the 18th, and Anna's is coming up on the 13th. So if you're interested at all, those give you another little slice. One of the things that was very interesting at the one that Todd and I were in, which was Linda Stewart's, was the interest that many people had in our lakes. And so we were questioned quite a bit about that, and we gave them some information about that. We talked a little bit about the Winter Park Library, so we're going to be sure and have a picture of all of this. I wish you could have seen the exciting families and children, because it was just fun. I came out that day thinking we are doing so many things right in this community, because there were so many happy families, so many kids there. So I really enjoyed seeing that kickoff. So read your books. Also met with a lady who's new to our community from the state of California named Peggy Bowl, B-O-L, and she's working with the Garden Club, and they're going to be celebrating their 100th year in 2022, and she wants to come in front of us and share some of the things they're doing. They want 100 butterfly or monarch gardens in the city of Winter Park for 100 years. So at some point we'll get her with Clarissa and other people and make sure that you see all the cool things the Garden Club is doing.
Did Miss Bowl come from Sacramento?
Yes.
I think I've met her too.
Yes, she's a, yes, and she's doing just wonderful things. It's so exciting. Then last Saturday night, the Children's Gala, which I've been a part of for 10 years, which is how long they've been doing it, honored Buddy Dyer for his work with young children in our community. So that was a thrill to see him be recognized. And then we have a number of things that are coming up, with Father's Day coming up in Phelps Park. Our we have so many great children's programs that I wanted to suggest to you guys that we think about something. And I guess this is just me, and I realized sometimes I was asleep at the switch when we decided that our community should be the community for culture and heritage, and it should be. But I also want to make sure we add families in a word back into that somehow. And I saw what you did tonight, Mayor, when you had the young 8-year-old boy up here, and what that family did. We were all here a few weeks ago when we had all those great athletes and their families from Winter Park, the high school. And it made me think, I saw our school board person at this deal with Buddy Dyer the other night, and I thought, I haven't done a good job of talking to our elementary schools about their dreamer and doer students. They should come here too. So we've done a great job of celebrating those families, but I want us to do more, because that's just part of what I know everybody up here wants that too. We just have to think about it. So I wanted to bring that up, and I talked to Angie Gallo, who's our representative on the school board, and she said, oh, that's a great idea. We'll start looking at some things we can do from our elementary and middle schools. And I know the Winter Park Playhouse is having a kickoff next week for some cool things that are going on. I just had one other mention. We get a lot of requests from on email from people who have an issue or a problem. And I don't know if everybody responds to them or what, but I wish we had a way, because Randy knows I just send them right to him and he responds and gets them to the right hands, but I don't want us to all feel like we have to do that. It just happened just yesterday, and you all are very responsive. But I just think as a general person's agreement, we need to figure out how to do that, because I don't know that we all need to do that.
So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would respond that all mayor and commissioner emails get sent. Randy's CC'd on those as well, isn't that correct? So he gets copies of those. So if it's outside of, as I said before, from a policy perspective, I think you could certainly give your opinion on policy. But if it's an administrative, if somebody's got a tree issue or the noise, it's too loud at Showalter, the city manager and city staff know about those already. So I don't know, you don't need to forward those on. They're aware of them.
I know, but I like to know what we tell the people, because a lot of them are not just the Showalter issue, but I like to know what the answer is, and Randy's very good at giving us that answer back. So that was really just what I wanted to find out. If there was, I know we're all responding, and I know we're saying, I usually respond with thank you for writing, because that's what it is, but they are very good at responding, and I just wanted to make sure everybody got the same information. So thanks.
Commissioner Cooper.
I think I covered the library appraisal, and the next thing was, as I read through the minutes and listened to the meeting that I missed, I noticed that Commissioner Weaver had requested that he had expressed concerns with the septic tanks, with the electric, and with the budget on the library. And I noticed that we have workshops scheduled both on the septic and on the electric, but I don't see that we're having any sort of a conversation on the library. And I personally share and have for a long time, everyone knows, concerns regarding the budget. And I would like to understand, when I had my one meeting with me and 10 staff and people from the library, there were things that were shared with me that I don't know if they were shared with you. I know that the discussions, the topics that Greg might talk about are probably different than the topics I would talk about. But on the other hand, I would like to be informed by understanding what's on your mind and what things you're focusing on and concerned about and what your thoughts are. So for me, I have a really big problem with the continuous one-on-one. It's not one-on-one, it's one commissioner with 10 staff or 6 staff, and yet we're not learning from each other. And this is probably, I mean, the library happens to be just one of them. I feel this way about lots of things, but.
Did you listen to the commission meeting?
I did.
I talked for the library about 10 minutes about kind of where I stand on it.
Right.
And
Oh, I did hear your summary, and I heard your summary at the charter review, but only yours, you know. So I just really, for me, I would like to understand. Todd had an entire campaign. I would like to understand what your thoughts are and how you see as possible solutions moving forward. I would like you to understand the things in the budget that concern me. And I just think we need to somehow be able to share with one another. So I would very much like for us to have a workshop where we just talk to each other. That's my first question. I won't ask for nods yet, but that's where I'm going. I just believe that better governance happens when we're sharing the same information. And I know that that's hard to regulate when someone is talking to individual commissioners with groups of staff and we're not talking to each other. I don't want to get to the end of the road and be asked to vote on something and I don't even understand how Sarah feels and why she feels that way. So I don't know what we can do about that, but I would like us to think about some either workshops, or I'm going to ask you individually if you'll come sit here at a microphone and just have a chat with me. And if you aren't comfortable with that, I get it. But I just think we need to be talking to each other. So that's my first point. And that bleeds over into the CRA meetings that we're getting ready to have. I know, Greg, thank you. You did express on the commission that you had some level of comfort with utilizing CRA funds if it didn't go above a certain dollar value, but I don't know how other people feel. And to me, I'm very protective of CRA funds because nothing is more important to me than the post office property. So I want to talk about that. I want us to have a strategic budget meeting where we're talking to each other about what are we going to do with that upcoming $30 million and how are we going to spend it. So I would love to see, instead of one-on-one meetings, which I'm going to next week on the CRA, I would actually like to see 5 people talking together about these things. And I just feel very strongly about that. And I hope that as we move along, I can get some support for having workshops on these things. And certainly the library budget, certainly the CRA budget, those are things that I believe I could add value, and I believe you could add value to me. And the idea that we're siloed on these things when this is the biggest economic investment the city is going to make for a long, long time, I don't think that's healthy. I think it gives a perception that anyone that asks a question is against something, and that's simply not the case. I want an opportunity to talk to you and hear you. But anyway, I would I would certainly like, have you already had your one-on-one meetings about the CRA? I know I was gone, so it's possible.
I have not had my one-on-one meeting.
Okay, have you, Sarah, have you already had the one-on-one meeting? Okay, so I would like very much to see if I could get 3 nods that we could have a CRA budget workshop as opposed to one-on-one meetings isolating us from each other and controlling the flow of information. I don't feel comfortable about that. Because that is the ultimate result. You can
It
say
just sounds
anything
so
you want.
devious,
I know,
Commissioner,
no,
to
it's not
controlling the
devious.
flow
It's
of
a
information
natural,
and separating us one on, I mean.
it's a natural thing that happens when you have to repeat the same thing to 5 different people on 5 days. And I think we would benefit from a little more groupthink, that's all.
So why don't we, 2 things, if you take some comments before you ask for the 3 nods, thank you.
Absolutely.
The comment I would have on the library is we decided to move forward with the library budget, and I don't know what meeting you're talking about. I didn't have a meeting with myself and 8 individual members of the
I
staff.
think we all met with, not just staff, it was all of the design team. I was very helpful. It was before,
early on.
before the TDT. No,
A
it was
while
just
back,
right
okay.
before the, 2
While
weeks
back.
before the
Sure.
TDT meeting.
Okay. Well, I mean, as far as that goes, I expect to have a budget discussion when they come back with the budget. And so I don't need to understand who thought about a certain design element of the project. If I like it, then I'll support it regardless of whose idea it is. And if I don't like it, then I'll vote against it if I don't think it's worthy. As for the CRA, I think we need to know what the timing is on the budget process for that too. Randy, I assume we're going to have a meeting on the CRA budget coming up. Is that not accurate?
I don't know that Kyle's out here, but the second meeting in July, there's going to be a CRA meeting before the commission meeting, and that would be to talk about the budget as a group at that point.
Okay, so there are group sessions
So
to discuss.
that's right before the vote. The day, it's just
No.
right before the vote?
No, the vote's in September. The budget's adopted in September.
Yeah, it's an entire process
we'll-
where we're briefed
Right.
as a group.
Right, so I'm going to
I
present.
know, I've watched it
So-
many different ways
Yeah,
over the years.
so that same day, in the regular meeting, you vote on the tentative millage rate,
Right.
but that's not the
Okay,
actual budget.
so we,
It is a process. It's been a process.
right, but right now, we're having meetings discussing the budget. I mean, we have to discuss the budget. We're talking about the library, and the library's going to need some of the CRA funds. And I think most of us think that might be good. I don't mean the library, oh, I should never say the library, I mean the Canopy project. And so I just want it to be, I want us to talk about those things, that's all.
Anyone else? No?
But would say, I'm happy to talk about the CRA dollars if you want to sit and have a meeting, right? But as far as the
Pretty
library
small list of
goes,
things.
we won't, until we have the price in my mind, that's when we have the discussions. And like I said, it could come in much less than what the estimates are. We don't know, or it could come in much more. So we don't know what the discussion is, and I would feel it'd be more efficient to wait until we know what we're actually debating when it comes to what we have in the library price. So for me, I don't want, that's that one, but for the CRA, I'm always happy to talk and sit and talk about what we're gonna spend that money on.
Okay, anybody else?
So my question is, can I get 2 additional nods to have a workshop where we as a group, in lieu of these individual meetings that we've been invited to attend in the next week, mine scheduled for next week, would it be possible for me to get the support of 2 other people to have a workshop where we're together to look at these things and talk about it?
Are you talking about just the CRA meetings
Yeah,
now?
just the
Okay,
ones
so
they're trying
what
to
you're
have next
recommending
week.
us do is have a CRA workshop as opposed to each one of us individually meeting. And I have no issue with that. If we can find a time where we can all do it, I am fine with that. So I
Thank
would
you.
think it would be much easier for staff to have 1 meeting than to have 5, but so I am fine with that. But
So-
that's the
Thank
only
you.
one we're dealing
Yeah,
with right
that's
now.
all we're
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about.
fine.
Can I get one more person that might?
Well,
Nod.
that's 2, I said I would.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
So Randy,
I
can you
just said I
try to
would.
schedule a time where we can meet as a group?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cooper, did you also ask for nods to have a group think on the Canopy project in the near term? not so much about the costs and budgets, but about the design period.
My interest is the budget. I mean, that is my interest primarily, is the budget, but I wouldn't mind talking about it in general. But I perceive that I did not have support on that, which is the reason I didn't make that request. But if you want to, I would certainly support it, but I just didn't hear. I can ask, you know, I don't mind asking for, can I get 3 nods for us to sit down and do a debrief on our individual meetings with the design team and staff?
Yes.
Yeah, you got, I don't know what will come out of that. We're heading to final design plans.
Okay, let's not rehash, folks. We've just done this.
So I don't,
I
you
don't
know,
believe you have the
once
numbers.
we have that price, all cards are on the table. That's where I'm at with it. I mean, I would rather debate knowns than debate unknowns. And the only reason in my mind to meet is to figure out if we're gonna vote faster one way or the other. And that's, and
Oh,
so,
see, for me,
That's what
it's not a matter of ever voting no. It's a matter of trying to work the issues early enough in the process that I have a sense of confidence with the budget.
Well, can you
comes.
give me some issues that you're really, really concerned about that would change anything we're doing right now?
I would.
Besides cost.
No, it's everything I care about is about budget, and it's not about the end budget, it's about the budget that is perceived for risk and the amount of contingency and.
Okay, so, but we're gonna have a budget, we know that, and that's, so
That's
for me, that's why.
$640,000 from now, and we may be able to come to some sort of understandings that would keep us from spending that money in a direction that was very much supported by all 5 commissioners. That's all. I just think conversation is healthy, that's all.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it's not healthy, but I don't know that I'm gonna change where I'm at, or it's gonna make anything different for me, from my perspective, what I've analyzed and what I've looked
Right.
at, and kind of where we're
Right.
going, that would make any difference. That's why I'm asking if you can tell me something now, like a preview, that would make me want to change my mind. I just haven't heard anything yet. that's
Okay,
all.
so, if the buyer's rep felt as though and specifically said that the contingency line needed to be reconsidered, would you consider that reasonable? If we only have,
Yeah,
I have some
Yeah,
things.
if you
I
want
just
to talk
think
about the
I don't like
contingency
to do
line.
this fragmented. I
Right,
would
but in
rather have a
October, we will
conversation.
know what, the contingency doesn't matter in October. It's gone, because we now have the price, and now we debate the price.
The price isn't due till January, though.
Well, all I know is the further we go down the road,
Right.
the more money we have invested. And if we can have conversations that might help us have more opportunity to come to consensus about things, I think it would be positive. But I'm okay, Greg. I don't like doing, throw out this and throw out that. You wouldn't like it. I would rather have a conversation with you as to why and what it's based on. But if,
Well,
I mean, I could prepare to talk on every commission agenda about the things that concern me. I don't want to just talk. I would like to listen.
Well, that's what
because
we're
I know
doing here, and that's what we
you're
have
talking about
the
might be
opportunity
different.
to do here.
Okay.
I mean, that's the,
I can do it. I don't think that's but I can do that. But I would rather have a conversation, and that would be at a workshop. So I guess I know clearly, I want to make sure I understand, that you are not supportive of that. And I'll just hush and move on.
correct, unless there's some, to me, because I do projects, if we're going towards the price, and we know what the price is gonna be until you bid the job, and then it's time to have the debate about what you're gonna do and what you're not gonna do. And until then, we're just debating what ifs. And we debated a lot of what ifs for a long time. And so we're kind of now in this, okay, here's where we're at, and once we get, if the price is in January, we'll find out where we are in January.
Well, I'll be very clear. My issues are relative to foundation, and my issues are relative to contingency, and my issues are relative to ways to segment and phase the project such that we can do it within the existing budget and give the project team a supportable, comfortable contingency within their budget. That's it.
If the project team came to us and said, we need to sit and talk to y'all, then I'll go talk
But
to
see,
them.
you don't know what they said to me, you only know what they said to you.
Right, I don't know what they said to
which is the
you, but I
point.
would hope they would come to Randy and say, hey, we got a big problem, you need to get the whole commission, and we need to have a conversation. Because to me, that's the crisis. If the crisis is just having a conversation with you,
Right.
it's not that much of a crisis, because they
No,
ought to
it's
call
not
me.
a crisis,
Right,
right.
and-
It's
right,
not-
right.
Sure,
So,
it's not a
so
crisis.
if they were in
It's a
crisis.
conversation. It's an
Right,
opportunity
I would
to
suspect
learn
we'd all
from
hear
each
about
other.
that, but
Right.
we've got designers working on trying to solve all the problems. They haven't solved them all yet. They don't know what the costs are. They haven't explored all the ideas yet. That's what they're doing right now. And so when they have those explored, and they
They're in
have,
the final phase, though. You send them into construction drawings.
right, that's what they're doing now. And they
Right.
can't solve the problems until they're actually looking at them in great detail. So that's what I'm anxious to see when they get to that point. So we're not talking about the how you handle this, they have handled it.
And and what do you perceive, since I shared with you, what do you perceive as the problems they're handling?
They're figuring out the proper foundation. They're figuring out the stormwater details, because they didn't have final stormwater details last time we
Right,
talked,
no,
right?
that's good, okay, so
Right?
we're on the same team. My
Right.
concern was, yeah.
Right.
All right, that's
So
good. I
it's-
just want to make sure I haven't missed something. That's why I'm asking you, what problems are you worried about? I told you which ones
Right,
I'm
well,
worried
I
about.
also want to look at the trees. I've asked them to save the
Right.
trees, so there's a lot of things.
No, that's fair, and that's the
Right.
kind of thing, and I didn't mean for that to be a debate, I just meant for it to be a sharing, so that we're all understanding the challenges that we're dealing with, that's all.
And I don't disagree there's challenges, but I'm letting
Okay.
the engineers and the architects figure them out, not us in a discussion.
No, I understand. Which I looked at it, the point at which I looked at it, the load bearings had not even been transmitted from the architect to Arteman back to update the thing. So if you want to, we can talk about it right here. I don't think it's a good, I think it'd be better to have a conversation, but this, anyway, that's all. It wasn't trying to tell anybody how to do anything. It was trying to make sure I understand the things that you see in addition to the things that
Oh,
I see.
I see a lot. I see a
No,
lot
I
of
appreciate
issues,
that,
and that's
Greg.
what I'm waiting to see how they solve them.
All right.
That's,
Okay.
so,
So
if
I
that gives you
think,
any comfort
I
level.
think,
where
I thought we were
Commissioner
there.
Weaver, that means that only two of us want to sit down and talk, and we can do that if we want. Excuse me. That's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner
I
Weaver.
think this is a mistake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I wanted to give kudos to Mayor Leary for his consideration and appointment of Mary Daniels to the Charter Review Board. Well done, sir. I thought Sarah was going to steal all my thunder talking about our meeting with Senator Stewart, but she phrased it very well. Wanted to remind everybody that the Palacic is having a pretty interesting pollinator series, and they have a professional beekeeper giving a tour out there soon. It's tomorrow, that's right, thank you. And I had 2 big oak trees go down in my backyard last year in Irma, and both my bat houses went down with it. So I bought a much bigger bat house that holds 600, and it's fully stocked now. I saw them coming out about a week ago finally. Usually takes a little while. And I guess I'm a lecturer now. The University Club asked me to come for their, Science, Health, and History series. So I talked about the history of sanitation and thinking that it would bore everyone to death. And so I've since been asked to give that lecture at 2 other venues here in town. So I was going to ask for the meeting minutes from last the May 13th to be updated, but the vote went a bit fast. But the point I wanted to make was that the minutes reflected that I had a presentation that was against the project, and I apologize if I gave some people that impression. What I stated was some observations based on my experience and asked some pertinent questions about costs. I'm certainly not against the project. Vice Mayor Seidel also asked a very pertinent question early on regarding the cost to go to the next drawing milestone. When I reviewed the video, some 15 minutes had elapsed and the construction drawing cost was still not answered by those contractors seated in the gallery, which included the owner's representative. Without that figure, the vote went ahead. I later found out from the city manager that that cost was $640,000. A former commissioner was also listed as being opposed, but when in fact he simply asked 5 relevant questions, and I hope we can get answers to those questions soon. So I'm not a financial guy, and you know, Greg and I are of similar backgrounds, and when I met with the design team, we basically talked about engineering and design. And I'm a bit nervous about several design aspects, and that's why I voted not to go to the next phase, because I didn't think the architects were done to my satisfaction. So I met with several of them separately, including the AJ lead architect, Russell Crater, and he and I spoke about the rooftop venue specifically, and the layout that he showed me did not address the mechanical equipment that's required on the roof. So Mr. Crater told me he had some ideas about that, which would necessarily eliminate about 1/3 of the roof area available for that venue space. But when the architect came back and gave this commission his presentation, he showed the exact same layout 10 days later without the mechanical equipment. You know, you can't operate a big volume building without heating and air conditioning, so things like that concern me greatly. And I asked for a delay in the vote for 2 reasons. One was to have Commissioner Cooper present for that, and also to look at some of the practicality of the features. The raked auditorium concerns me greatly. It's 1 foot above the level of Lake Menson. Any of you that's ever emptied your swimming pool in Florida knows what that's all about. Hydrostatic pressure pushes such things out of the ground without the water inside the pool. And, you know, I've been involved professionally with projects that creep. That's normal. But this project, to me, you can't describe how it's progressed as creep. This thing has running shoes on, and I'm very concerned about that. So I didn't make a motion to not go ahead, because Sarah had already made a motion ahead of me, and I was looking for a second vote to delay it at least until this week. So anyway, to Commissioner Cooper's request for another nod, I do think we need to sit down and talk about the design thoroughly, because I think that there are some very detrimental issues that shouldn't go to the detail stage. And the drawings that I saw at these meetings, they are detailed enough for somebody like Greg and I to review and to see if it makes sense. And I'm very nervous about the stormwater right now. I mean, we have designed parking lots. We know the footprints of these buildings. We know what the driveways look like. We should know a lot more about the stormwater management than we do. So that's why I voted no, because I don't think we're ready to go to construction drawings. So I would ask for 2 nods to have a workshop. Thank you.
I would certainly support that.
Is that almost